We're looking at the art of event production. It's hosted by Kerwin Ballers out of Guyana. It's a star panel. We have Patrick Tony Rebel Barrett. We have Dean Shepard out of Starlight Productions. Gentlemen, can you come to stage for me, please? We have Andrew Ellis from Sands. Come and say. So on stage is our host, Kerwin Ballers from Guyana. HGTV. We have Patrick Tony Rebel Barrett. Should I say from where? Is it? We have Dean Shepard from Starlight Productions. We have Andrew Ellis. You all know Sands. We have Janae Marie, and she's from TikTok. And we have Senior Superintendent Terrence Bent. He is the law of events. Gentlemen, welcome to stage, and lady, take it away.
Yes. Good morning to you, and thanks, Judy. We've been having an amazing time here in Jamaica. I feel really great to be sitting amongst these really important people. I was backstage, and we had some chit chat, and then I realized that these are some very movers and shakers in the business here in Jamaica and beyond. Good morning to you once again, panel. How y'all feeling this morning? Yeah, man. I went to a boat ride, and the DJ was saying when you come to Jamaica and somebody asks you a question and you're feeling good, you say, yeah, man. So I'm going to take that back to Guyana. Panel, good morning. Guys, events is a very important part, or plays a very important role in society. I think a lot of times people do not realize how important entertainment is a getaway space, creating a space, a healthy space for persons to either celebrate themselves or others, or sometimes people just want to get away from the hustle and the bustle and the stress, and they want to go to somewhere, and they look towards event promoter to create that space for them. How important it is for you as a promoter to pretty much create that healthy space for persons, and how do you pretty much come up with the ideas of what you think patrons are looking for? I think we can start with Mr. Rebel as a big man.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. You have three pillars that entertainment rests on. You have preparation, you have execution, and you have accuracy. So we have to be accurate with how we do our feasibility studies, what the people need, and make sure that we present that to them. It's like I am an artist, and I understand the music from what I want to hear. So I use that and judge the others, and then I just put it together, and it works.
Dean?
Hi. I guess mine is a little bit different, being on the production side. I will more work with the promoters, the persons, the organizers, to see what their concept is. Because we don't think we have a static role in the event industry. We have a dynamic role to work with the event producers to ensure that what we're giving them in terms of the setup and design matches what they're trying to communicate to their patrons. And so it's a very iterative process in terms of working with the promoters, the event producers, in terms of what they're trying to achieve, what their ultimate objective is, and then putting forward something that we think represents, kind of our thing is about pushing a first-class operation going forward. I think that for a long time, we have done simple events, and persons like Andrew are also helping to push the boundaries of what event production should look like in Jamaica. And we're pretty much happy to support that by always pushing the envelope in terms of what the design and the setup should look like to communicate with patrons attending.
Andrew, you have a number amount of successful events, and for persons who follow your event all across the globe, it's not just Jamaica, it's not just Canada. How do you pretty much work with the different markets? Because every country is different in terms of what they look for entertainment. How do you balance that, and how do you, what is the process when you go to a next territory to find what these people are really looking for?
All right. Morning, everyone. So it's a number of things. I think the most important thing is to do your research, right? And sometimes the research is first-hand, like you go over there, literally talk to people in the entertainment space, and the second part is second-hand. So we focus a lot from the Suns side, we focus a lot on the right partnerships, you know? So I'm not just gonna get up and go into a new market because it looks good or it sounds good. Right. If I'm interested in a market, then, sometimes you can gauge interest by just reading the feedback. Like when we've done, let's say, our biggest event, Sunsets at Stadium, and the highlights are being posted, you have a lot of people saying, bring this to LA, bring this to Miami, bring this to New York, but that's not really the only thing that you use to determine if you go. It's really if the market has a large, because we have a lot of support from the diaspora markets and so on. So if I have, through networking, if I have a right partner that I'm working with, and they have shown that they can do events at this scale, they focus on the fundamentals, and that's something that we're going to get into. You want to make sure that the due diligence is in place before you go into a new partnership, you know? So I would say long and short is just to take the time and do your research before you make a move.
So research.
Absolutely.
Not just run into markets or run into an area because you may have seen an event would have done great in that particular space. Janae, morning again. TikTok, of course, and we're gonna stay on the same question. Like, the question is asked so many times. How do you guys decide on what content you're gonna push on TikTok? What is that process?
Morning, by the way, everyone. Hi. I guess it's different in the sense of, so in terms of my role specifically, I'm very externally faced. So there's a content team, there's a devoted content team that looks at trends, looks at trending sounds, and looks at creators. We obviously call everyone creators from artists, etc. Creators on the platform that are doing really well, and we amplify them. And I believe someone on a panel yesterday was explaining how there's like a devoted team for like artists, there's a devoted team for creators. It kind of works that way, the same kind of framework within TikTok. However, when it comes to like the work that I do, I spend a lot of my time, it's very funny actually, I spend a lot of my time throughout the day looking at TikToks, looking at people. I look specifically at black creators, black artists within the UK that are doing phenomenal work that we want to amplify further. So I look at tentpole moments throughout the year. So I look at the likes of, obviously I'm based in London, so we look at Black History Month in October, we look at Stephen Lawrence Day, we look at Ramadan, we look at very important moments throughout the year that impacts black people, whether it's in a good way, bad way, whatever, and see how we can amplify our community further. So from a content standpoint, I spend a lot of my time looking at the work that artists are doing, like are there any artists that are activists on the platform? Are there any artists that are really good at talking about a specific topic, such as sickle cell? So for Black History Month last year, we had a devoted sickle cell panel where we spoke about sickle cell and how people should be giving blood, and we did it in partnership with the NHS. And the way I booked the talent and the way that I booked the artists and the creators, I was looking on the platform and I said, right, I'm gonna pick Kane Kawasaki because he's an activist, he's very informative, he's very great at engaging the audience, and it's all about how we look in-app and then how we take it off of the platform to amplify our community further. But from a content standpoint, it's just very much like a lot of the creators and influencers have been saying on the panels before, what is your ethos? What are you pushing? Are you very active on the platform? Like, we look at those sort of things. We're saying, like, a lot of artists come up to me saying, oh yeah, I really want to do this on TikTok. And the first thing I ask them is, do you have a TikTok account? If they don't say no, they'll say, yeah, but I haven't used it in like 4 months. that's literally red flags to our ears, because we want to be booking people that are very active on the platform. We want to be booking people that, like, the way the algorithm works, you won't get it right all the time, but as long as we can see that you're trying, that you're actively trying to amplify your fan base using relevant trends, sounds, etc., it will really, really encourage the people like myself that work at the company to book people and continue the relationship, basically. So it's a lot of it's to do with using the platform. You don't have to use it correctly, because, listen, we're all winging it. That's one thing a lot of people haven't really said yet. Like, we're all winging it. We're all trying to work it out just the same. But just ensuring that you're staying in touch with your brand, keeping in touch with the platforms that you want to work with, and tapping into your fan base, tapping into the followers and the content that you're using will really, really, definitely increase the chance of the people like myself that are behind the scenes booking talent, putting programs and events together to book talent.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Robert, for you, how's your process like? How do you go through your process?
Morning, everyone. From the police perspective, it's a collaborative partnership engagement. Like Tony Rebel said, once you begin to envisage an event, the critical players have to come to the table to look at all of the possible challenges. So, for example, in planning major events, in particular entertainment events, the stakeholders normally include your health, your municipal council, your media, your fire, all of the players that have a role to play. Because whilst the promoters, the production, the media people are looking at having a great event, we have to remind them of some of the legal requirements. Because these are important in that you want to have all of your safety protocols. I was quite impressed when an event that was done in Jamaica, and the production people could tell you what is the square footage for each person in a static event, a seating event, or in an ambulatory event. So it's a science that has to be juxtaposed around the legal requirements. And a lot of people don't understand that. The event is more than just the venue itself, not the physical space. It involves the social media space, the metaverse. It involves all of the players who are not participating, who can be infected. What do I mean? At the National Stadium, you have a host of communities. You have people who are going about their other business. So the production must take into consideration how are the persons who are not coming to the event are going to perceive the event before, during, and after. The Noise Abatement Act has to be a part of it. Traffic management has to be a part of it. So when we put a plan together, we look at all of the things that are surrounding the event. Long before the event happens, we need to inform the members of the public that on this day, we're going to have an event. You're likely to see traffic changes. People can begin to say, listen, let us come very early, not to be entangled with the persons. Let us leave out very late so as not to be discombobulated and discomforted. And when we plan the events, we bring that to bear. The other thing that is important is each event has its own peculiarity. Let me give you a typical one. Our Grand Gala and our Boys Champs hold a large amount of people at the National Stadium. But these are events that take place over 8 hours, 10 hours. So we can say that people will begin to come in from, say, 10 a.m. and leave at 8. In a short event of 3 hours, the flow of people is more concentrated, and as such you have to deal with it differently. So like for the 2 last big events, that was Burna Boy and the Buju Banton Long Walk to Freedom, we had to make a new opening on the stadium to bring in persons from the eastern side. If it was an event over 6 hours or 8 hours, we could have said that the normal operations could take place. So in event planning, each event has its own peculiarity, its own crowd, its own dynamic, and for that we have to properly lay out the needs of the promoter production, the public, and then juxtapose the legal requirements for health, safety, and legality of these events.
Well
Hope I haven't
said.
said too much. Hope I haven't said too much.
No, never.
No, I just wanted to add something to what you said. You see, because of that element, it's so important for the organizers to be transparent, right? So if I'm expecting 2,000 people, it don't make no sense. I tell the police is 200 because their plan is going to be for a certain size crowd. And a lot of times, some of us have a bad habit of trying to lower the numbers because we think the bid is going to be less, right? But at the end of the day, you're doing not only yourself but your patrons a disservice when you do that, because the right plan wouldn't be in place and you end up in traffic issues. You know, it's a number of logistic issues that you could have avoided that ends up affecting your brand, you know. So the communication is important and the transparency.
I was going to actually add to that, if that's okay.
Sure.
No, I completely agree because, yeah, we've noticed on multiple occasions within the music world in the last couple, years, we could say last year, I'm sure you guys all know the example of, artists, when things aren't done properly behind the scenes, whether it's promoters, whether it's, event organizers, people's lives could be at risk or worse. We've seen it happen at concerts, we've seen it happen at festivals, and that's the sort of legalities I can obviously imagine that you guys are talking about, because that's the first thing you always have to alert. Whenever I do an event, we did a massive float activation at Notting Hill Carnival last year in partnership with the Notting Hill Carnival Foundation. We had a float on the road. It was amazing. However, it was definitely risky in the sense of we had to manage expectations from the jump, manage expectations for the guests that were coming, managing expectations for the artists that are performing, and also managing expectations of the company. So obviously, in this case, representing TikTok. It can be quite dangerous on the road if you don't have the right protocols in place. Insurance, oh my God, it's a big one. Insurance. And also ensuring that you have liability stuff in line, because as much as it's fun producing these things and making memories for people, when they go wrong, it can have a massive impact on the people involved. So I'm glad that we brought this up in conversation, because I don't think people understand the magnitude. Planning it's really, really fun, but it's also very, very stressful, because especially with the work that we do, being transparent, also down to doing quote unquote black events. There's been multiple times, even before I worked at TikTok, I'd do an event for an artist. Loads of venues don't want to touch these specific artists. Loads of these people that you want to work with don't even want to touch it due to stereotypes that will be happening around the world, and it's really counterproductive, because I'm sure the reason why we're all doing what we're doing is to amplify our community further, right? So yeah, it's definitely something that I think about every single day. It's a risk.
As events organizers, promoters, not so long ago, we've been through a pandemic. And I know that would have hurt a lot of our business, globally, because we look forward to persons to attend in person. And we've seen what then was the norm, or what became the new norm, was, events hosted online. Did you guys participate in that? And can you give us a little experience, a little overview as to what that was for you in terms of moving from what you were accustomed to then moving into a different space using social media to host events?
Yeah, well, we actually did one event online, and the people were not satisfied. You know what I mean? We got lots of hits, but they wanted the actual show. I mean, when a pandemic or something hits and you have a brand that is very consistent, you can easily bounce back, because we have bounced back this year tremendously. Just because we had a good brand, we maintained the brand and had the brand just waiting to come back. But the online event is you have to put a whole heap of money into making the event go on. And then you don't make back any, because online is not really a really profitable place, you know what I mean? So, yeah, the show itself, the physical show is the best.
Yes, similar to that. I mean, again, we touched it on multiple sides, working with clients who wanted to find opportunities to showcase their activities online. And on the event side, I would say that the promoters struggled because I don't think promoters themselves believed in the entertainment value of online during the pandemic. And patrons as well missed, physical touch and being out there and immersing themselves in the activity. Where we benefited mainly was investing on the platform side, the camera and the streaming equipment to produce those shows to keep us going during the pandemic. And more of our corporate clients were still able to share their message with their audience. So for them, they were able to pivot and communicate nonetheless with their corporate clients, AGMs, information sharing. But from an entertainment standpoint, I think 3 to 4 months people tried it and then said, we're just going to wait. We're just going to wait till it opens up because it's just not the same interaction.
All right, so I'm a little bit different. We've over the course of the last couple of years, we've gotten a little bit of a tag about being a little bit rebellious, right? So here's the thing: when COVID hit in March 2020, right? We were unable to do our events. We had a weekend plan for Easter that year that we had to cancel, which was a big hit on our business, right? And a lot of businesses had the same or similar challenges. But one of the opportunities that came from having a brand that resonates in different markets is that you had an opportunity, or we had an opportunity to execute where there was more flexibility. So if you were following it closely, you realize that Florida specifically was a little bit more liberal during rebellious, right? So in October of that year, we were able to get some leeway where we could execute our event legally, which was a blessing for us. But at the same time, it was a very sensitive period, where persons were saying it's irresponsible and so on, but we were able to put relevant things in place so that it could happen and it's relatively safe. But at the end of the day, events are events, so there's not a lot you can do. But that was a blessing for us. And in the following year, 2021, during COVID, we still were able to go into Atlanta, Florida, over time, New York. So that was definitely one of the biggest blessings I could say. But that period of time that we weren't able to execute was crippling, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's it. That's my experience with COVID. I didn't get to do the online thing. The truth about it is it definitely would have been something that persons probably would have wanted to happen, but at the end of the day, it wasn't commercially viable. The truth is people want it, but it's not necessarily something that they want to pay for, and that's just the reality of it. And execution costs, that's just the reality. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I think my point of view is definitely a little bit more different because people would think I'm absolutely crazy. I left Sony Music in the heart of the pandemic. I was doing events for artists. It was it was an amazing job, from ticketing to album playbacks for artists in the UK roster. It was a great job. TikTok came along and they were like, we need someone to run the events in the UK, predominantly they did it for creators initially, and I kind of made my role when I was there. And I decided to leave a major label to move to, at the time everyone was just like, what's this app? I went when everyone was like, what the hell is TikTok? Nobody knew what it was. They thought it was Vine, before Vine was Vine, because Musical.ly was TikTok before TikTok was TikTok, I guess. And I remember people just being like, you're making the maddest decision leaving because we're in the pandemic. What are you going to do doing events in the pandemic? But, I listened to my spirit, took the risk. And yeah, I guess from a business standpoint, it worked in our favor because we thrive off of live streams. We thrive off of content creation. And there was loads of things people were doing battles on live stream. From you could do a battle in the UK and you're having a battle with somebody in Australia, having a battle with someone in Singapore, you were able to do that. So it worked for our favor to utilize that, and understanding what the world was doing in the midst of the silence at the same time. And I guess for us, from a business standpoint, the return of investment was strong because, you know, our main aim is to ensure that we're bringing entertainment and joy into people's lives, right? Like, that's our ethos, and we're an entertainment platform, so it worked out well for us. I did find the jump from doing like in real life like moments to just doing like online workshops, online programs quite at first challenging because it wasn't what we were used to. And especially within the UK, like, as you guys know, the government, you couldn't go nowhere. You literally couldn't go anywhere, and it was very, very frustrating. I'm sure, like it happened here, you'd get fined, arrested, or worse, like you could not leave your house. So it was just very much, for someone like me, I had to think smart and not hard and just utilize the platform, obviously at the time, and still is, that we had to ensure that we had a budget behind like paying for an artist to do a particular live stream of a specific creator and create memories for people. So I guess in that standpoint of utilizing a platform, it worked out very, very well for us, but I definitely would be lying if I said that it wasn't crippling. From doing events in real life, meeting new people, having experiences, to being strictly online for like a year was very, very hard.
Yeah. Terrence, I mean, I know it's a little different for you in your case here, but, you know, returning to normalcy was a period. You know, I know that some promoters had to reduce capacity just to pretty much fit into the guidelines. How was that in your department? How challenging it was?
It was challenging, particularly from a socio-economic perspective and a cultural perspective. You know, Jamaicans, Caribbean people are very into entertainment. Kingston is the Mecca in the Caribbean. One of the things we realized that there was a difficulty in transitioning from the usual format. So even in planning a lot of the events, we had to look at the legal requirements in terms of spatial management, you know, 50%, 75%. Sometimes hard, and Andrew could tell you that, you know, you'll advertise an event, a venue to hold 1,000 people, and all of a sudden it can hold 5,000 people because they had to have a particular amount to break even.
Right.
So they were challenging in terms of articulating it, and I think the government, on the advice of the police, had to take a decision on public health or entertainment, and we know that it went to public health. One of the things that we realized post the pandemic, there was this thirst and hunger for entertainment. So when it actually came back online, there were these large outbursts. A lot of promoters became very wealthy because of the, the renewed invitation. But I think that's taught us a number of lessons in terms of that we can do it once there's public education in the first instance. Production, artists, the legal requirements are clear. And I think going towards zones will facilitate how that can be done. So I think the discussion needs to maybe move at some point to how we're going to create spaces of excellence so artists, production, and the public can enjoy unfettered and uninterrupted events so that we can, you know, not disturb the public, but have those. Because in a lot of countries, regulations are much more receptive. And in some places that we have our events planned for, they're not conducive. So I think going forward, whether a lobby from the artists or production or producers of events to actually engage entertainment zones so that we can have less friction and things like the pandemic can be facilitated, bearing in mind the requirements legally and, you know, public health restrictions.
Is there any security ideas that you guys would have, you know, created during that time that you still see that is still important to continue?
One of the lessons that we learned out of the COVID pandemic is the issue that as a society, there are certain steps that we need to continue to take. The whole hygiene, public health, I think those are the greatest takeaways. Because in an environment where you have this contact, we can still create safe spaces and reduce the impact of, you know, public health issues. So I think that is one of the issues. The other issue that we realized was that the public education between promoters on one end, and production and the public, through social media in particular, is important. The messaging that was done was impactful. And we need to understand that you have baby boomers, you have millennials, and the way they communicate is different. A 20-year-old wants to see a 30-minute video, because that is the span of, say, WhatsApp post at 30 minutes. How do you create messaging for that particular audience, who are the largest consumers of entertainment products? So it taught us about communicating using diverse platforms to have the same effect. So I think that's one of the greatest takeaways, that despite restrictions, there's an ability to use modern methodologies and the right content producers, because not everybody is listening to everybody. Once you have credibility, you can communicate effectively and using the media, since TikTok, whatever you're using, to get the message across.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to the takeaways from coming out of COVID, one of the greatest things, and it's something I've known in life, is that there's nothing that unites us more than a common enemy, right? And during that time, a lot of us as event organizers and even suppliers, we came together, to try and figure out how best we can make recommendations to the government from our side as to how we can operate safely. And I think that brought us together, and it's something worth talking about. And I'm happy that, normalcy is here, and we can all still support each other in that way and keep those relationships going,
Advertising is a key part in events, right? There's been a lot of discussion as to which form of advertising is best. We've seen the impact of social media. Do you guys still believe that traditional media is still a thing in advertising events? And what is your go-to advertising tool, whether it be social media, radio, print, billboards? What is your go-to? Tony?
Well, I think that when you have an event plan, you should use all aspects of the media. You should use the traditional media, you should use the TikToks, and you should use social media also. We try to do all aspects of it. We try to have billboard, and there's a strategy how you do it too. You have to have teasers, and then in the middle of it, you try to up that, and then you have a crescendo at the end, that everyone in the space must know that your event is going on. They don't want to come if them, but they must know that it is happening. So I see that all aspect of advertisement is good. Word of mouth is good too. Because when people come to an event and they see that the event is good, when you have your toilets well clean, you have people off the road, you don't have traffic jams, as Mr. Bent is talking about there. You have to have a science in which you have 10 cars off the road per minute, and then you won't have a traffic jam. So when you do things like those, it's like people will go about, and when one person come, then bring 10 persons the next time. So all aspect is good.
I think the fundamentals of generally marketing and communicating to your audience will still always be the roundtable discussion when you're planning every event. So you'll find that some events whose audience get everything news, entertainment from social media, then that's where you're going to see their events spend most of their advertising effort. Events that cut across different demographics and want more masses will incorporate more traditional media, just in terms of, if you look at the demographic of Jamaica, it might look like a lot of people are on social media or so forth, but there's a vast majority of people, depending on which events they're in tune to, that are not. So incorporating traditional media is always going to be important, but the entire marketing mix is really just boils down to your understanding of your target. You have events that get a couple thousand people and there's no mass marketing at all. It's all social media. So it's really about understanding your audience and therefore ensuring that you utilize all the relevant media.
Yeah, I mean, speaking for myself personally, social media has been super important. When we when we started using SANS as an example, 8 years ago, it was built solely on social media. We didn't introduce anything traditional until maybe the next year, and they have a lot of events like that, but you also have the traditional media or making sure that you have the right mix is important, especially as you try to scale, because the reputation of your brand is really driven through traditional media, to be honest with you. If someone Googles you, what they're going to find is a traditional media post about you, you know. So I try to encourage people to use media or traditional media as much as possible, especially when you're bringing on sponsors. You know, you want it to be published that you are sponsored by whichever company that's supporting you, and also if you're booking talent, like artists or big DJs that you're invested in and flying them in, you want the media to be talking about it as much as possible, so you get that return. And just also, what something that hit me is but everybody knows what happens a few years ago with the airport situation. It's been a topic. No, what a lot of people don't know is that period of time where everybody was talking about it, it actually helped us in the global marketplace, because the diaspora follows traditional media. So if it is that you have, let's say what it is, it was really a traffic issue, but it's a traffic issue because your event is being supported to a massive level. So what is it about this event that's kept in Jamaica that so many people are interested in it? So you find that those conversations in the diaspora market actually help catapult us in that level. So the traditional media aspect is very important, you know.
I actually agree with you completely. In terms of like the big like tech companies now, a lot of us are looking into data. And how we measure success, how we measure the impact of the programs and events that we're launching, right? The way that we would measure it, or the way that I'd measure it, how many press releases have been released, how many Google searches or searches within the like TikTok algo has there been relating to a certain topic. When we're talking about press, it's not just print press, so like newspapers, how many radio plays, how many people from like the likes of BBC are talking about an event that we've produced. Like that's the sort of stuff that we look at to measure success. So as much as we have a platform that we can amplify and promote our stuff, again, it's also down to safety as well, because when we have like a guest list, we invite a certain amount of people. So it's also important to ensure that we're keeping our guests, our creators, etc. safe. But in terms of the ROIs and like the targets that we've reached, it's very, very important for us to look at the Googles and to look at the press and newspaper articles. Like press for us and word of mouth as well is very, very impactful. So definitely think, and I agree with the traditional way of doing things in order to measure success for us as a business is important.
So I guess we can say that both traditional and social media is very important in advertising. Terence?
I think promoters need to invest in collaboration with our communication companies and communicate throughout the event and post the event. For example, you want at the close of the event to have signage to say these are your exit points, and have communication with your supplier so that you get prompts on your cell phone, WhatsApp or whatever, to say, when you're leaving, persons with this ticket leave at that side, you see signage, because that helps us to manage the event, close to the event. Right. So I'm just saying to you, you have a full stadium or full capacity, think about the experience leaving now. Give information about where you're leaving. If it's a shuttle service, remind people, because people come in at the top and they have information. But when we are about to finish the event, it is good. Sometimes some of the events don't have enough Wi-Fi, or sometimes Wi-Fi is restricted because of social media. They don't on a live stream. But at some point, you just say, we'll end in 30 minutes. Those persons who are going to this place, you can access your shuttle at that point. Exits are at those areas, and even at the end, your MCs could say, gentlemen and ladies, those persons on this side, create that feeling that the event doesn't end with me purchasing a ticket and entering, you're concerned about the post-event. Because in reality, a lot of people will enjoy a good show, Tony, but when time to leave, the traffic chaos puts a bitter end, and sometimes because of lack of good information to the persons leaving. So I think we could leverage all of those to make the event a success at the end. And then critically, use the social media, your WhatsApp, your Google Docs, just to get a feedback. Do a survey to get a feedback, because we communicate in, out. But what about the experience? We have a format. It's at www.tonyrebel.com for us to give us an assessment of how well we did, what we need to change. Use that for the next planning event.
So, just to add one more point to the media thing, I think it's important. At the end of the day, you have to know yourself and be true to yourself and know your budget, to be honest with you, because it's no secret that traditional media can easily become very expensive, and you don't want to compromise the other fundamental areas of your budget if you can, because for example, you don't want to skip on production on certain elements where that is concerned because you want the advertising. Yes, it's important that the patrons come, but there are a lot of ways that you can try to be creative. So for example, if you have an online ticket site that you're selling your tickets on, you could invest more in sponsored ads and boosted posts that you can actually see you can measure the returns on it, and you say, all right, well, I spent $100 there and I got 100 more sales. Maybe if I spend $1,000, I could get a lot more, and you can scale it. So these are conversations that you have with your team just to see, okay, we have $1 million. How are we going to split this $1 million so that the event can, one, be well attended, but also be logistically sound, which is also important, because the first thing people are going to do when they ask about your event, like if you go to a new venue and you're saying that you want to keep your event there, they're going to Google your event. And if it's a lot of logistic issues that follow you, they might be apprehensive about working with you, and and they have to remember this is a global market. It don't matter if it's happening in Jamaica or if it's happening in Florida. If you go to England, they're going to Google you. So you have to just be mindful of that and just be real to your budget when you determine how you're going to spend on marketing.
And while we're on budget, sponsorship plays a very important role in how you can also execute and to pretty much raise as much funds as possible. But there's always, this, I don't want to say fight, but there's always this, what do we give and how much do we give as promoters to sponsors? Because we know for sure sometimes you have sponsorship coming in at X dollars, but then sponsors want a return of X dollars, which sometimes is 2 to 3 times more than what they're actually paying for. How do you guys balance that?
Well, I balance that by trying to do most of the things myself. It's like I say at the beginning that stage show business is like the end product of whatever you learn at Edna Manley or whatever. And you have to make preparation and execution with accuracy. So when I think about sending out a proposal, I have to make sure that I edit properly. You have to make sure that no grammatical error is there. You know what I mean? You have to place your argument. You have to tailor-made something for some people, because the traditional way of doing things for one person is different for doing it for the other. I don't believe a sponsor should come and dictate to you after they give you a certain amount of money because of the reciprocal value. You give them certain amount of exposure and certain amount of things, certain amount of visibility at the show. So they should not dictate to you. I have had that problems where my sponsors want to, kind of dictate to me, and we have to really go through serious negotiation to get it done. But sponsorship is kind of hard. It's kind of hard in Jamaica because everybody holding on to their money. So when you're doing a show, you have to make sure that you have that seed money before you think about sponsorship.
Right, and similar to that, anytime people ask me about, can I give advice about how they approach sponsors, and I always say that you should be able to put on your event without sponsors in the first place. That's the first key to attracting sponsors, because sponsors want to know that you're going to already keep your event. And sponsorship should really be used to enhance your event. We get caught in the middle sometimes because, we have multiple corporate clients who are going to their events, and then, the promoter promised one thing and promised the other thing, and they're like, well, Dean, you can't set up over there, and the other person's, well, you have to set up over here. And so it goes back to communication, and I think the sponsor has an important role, not to just necessarily be a feeding tree for the event, but to enhance the patron experience. And I think that's where some of the more sophisticated promoters are carrying it now, creating their events that their events stand alone, and using the sponsors to create booths, bars, entrance ideas that do save and do affect the budget, but are more focused on enhancing the patron experience. It's a difficult one, especially when you do get to a stage where your event is very successful and attracts a lot of sponsors. And so Andrew has to choose between, okay, who really brings the most to the table from my experience. And communication is still what it boils down to, because you have to manage the experience both to your patrons and to your sponsors. And look at it as a long-term relationship as well. Don't just catch them for the cash.
Yeah. So when I was just starting 12 years ago, I asked for advice, right? The first bit of advice I'd gotten in that stage was, if your event doesn't make sense without a sponsor, then your event doesn't make sense, right? So that means that, to reinforce Dean's point, you have to be willing to execute your concept with or without a sponsor, because you are not guaranteed anything, right? You have to be willing to show that you have the capacity to execute your product or your concept, especially if it's a new concept, right? I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of what happened in that stage. I wanted to do an event. It was called Cocoa Fridays, right? And in my mind, I conceptualized it because I just tasted coconut rum, right? And I said, oh, nobody know about this, right? So I said, let me reach out to Reneville at the time. But I was young, nobody knew me, right? I was calling the brand manager for about 3-4 months trying to get a response, but you're nobody at that point. So you understand, people busy. But what I did was I went down there and I bought a case of that product every week and I gave it away. And then, you take pictures, you show that your concept makes sense. So the next year, Cocomin at the time was the title sponsor of that same event, because now you've built up some amount of equity and you've built up a relationship. And over time, you're going to learn that this business is more a relationship than business than anything else. Relationship is your strongest currency. So the more you can build that up, it's better for you. People will take your calls more, and sometimes you have to look at it as a partnership. The sponsor is not just giving you product or they're building a relationship with you, and you have to respect that. And what you can do is to practice expectation management, because that's really what it is. Say, hey, listen, you're giving me $10 in exchange for your $10. I'm willing to give you this and give you that, and that's what you stick to it. Because when you deviate from that, when you have issues, and the last thing I would say is just try to deliver value as much as possible back to your sponsor. It's not just about what you can get, it's about what you can give, And that's it.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I'm talking from a quote-unquote sponsor standpoint. A lot of the time when brands or companies, creators, artists, etc., want to work with TikTok, like as you said, mutually beneficial proposals always work out very, very well. And also from there's times where I've wanted to work with a charity, or I've really wanted to work with a specific brand. And one thing that would work out really well for the majority of us, especially from an event standpoint, we've noticed out of home, it's billboard, marketing, production is very, very expensive. So a lot of the time when brands come up to us, they're in return, we'd really appreciate if you could support us on production, and then we can handle the rest. And from like a TikTok standpoint, I'd be like, oh my God, that's great, because value exchange, we can promote you in-app. We could do a live stream that could be promoted. We can push it on our socials that has a reach of over like 1 million followers in the UK alone, let alone other territories. Like, you really need to leverage the connections that you have. And especially like the relationships, like that's one thing I can't stress enough. Like the relationships you have with people goes a very, very long way. Like it's very, very important, especially with the work that I do. I work a lot within the community, so as well as working with artists, I work with a lot of creators as well, established creators. It's very, very important that you have great relationships with people, because you just never know when you need them. And I can't stress that enough. You never know when you need them. Always be attentive as well. Like one thing that I really, for example, from an event standpoint, and also being a woman and the only woman on the platform, everybody backstage is a woman working in production. I love that. Like I like watching that. It's good to see that. As well as, of course, having multiple people. Oh, thanks. It's just good to notice, because it's like, these are the sort of things I look for. So if you never know, like if you wanted to be working with a particular brand again for like International Women's Day, is happening in March in the UK. These are the sort of things that we look out for, like as an event producer in the team that I work in. Like it's very, very important. And just making sure that you're leveraging the opportunities and the friendships that you have. You know me, I'm from London. You know, I'm lucky at my uncle's here, but I've got my girls, Cher and Abby, looking after me, taking care of me. They're there. So I know like whenever they come, especially with the stuff that they're doing, whenever they come to London, they're taken care of, because you have to ensure that, as well as having good relationships with people, friendships are pure and authentic, and it will really, really help from a partnership standpoint, as well as sponsorship as well.
Right, our time is almost up, or a matter of fact, it's up, but we cannot close the panel without talking about security, and I think the best person to talk about security and the importance of security is definitely the gentleman right there, Mr. Terrence, about, promoters, lots of times you're looking at your budget, and you're looking at areas where you can cut costs, and lots of times security is one of those areas. How important is security, and what are the do's and don'ts for promoters?
I twin security with safety in terms of the product. And I've done this from Jamaica qualifying for France in '98. All of the biggest shows in Jamaica, we've done it successfully. Jamaica has a high reputation of executing safe events and secure events. Promoters, however, have budget lines. So we have to optimize value for money between private security, police, and all the attendant issues. I must say that the Jamaican promoters, in the main, have an understanding and appreciation for security and safety. And my experience is that they are willing to protect the patrons and members of the public. So I want to maybe commend all of the promoters, those on the platform and those in the audience. Won't call any names, but he's smiling, because they have an appreciation and they accept it. And although we have to identify rationale for numbers, I think the commitment to protect the patrons is very high in Jamaica, and that is why we've had so many wonderful events. I've been across the world. I've been to planning for Qatar 2022, and we've seen the need for security, because it is a preventative tool. It's not just to detect and find violators. It prevents a tool. And one of the big ticket items is that across the world, police have that final responsibility and that legal acceptance that if it doesn't do well, we've seen across the world. We saw that event in South Korea. We had the crush. Yeah. They arrested a corporate, one of the ministers, for failing to plan and execute. So we can understand. We've seen across the world what has happened when people fail to plan and invest in security. So I just want to take the opportunity to commend all the promoters that I have worked with, and I work with the police, that they understand and they accept. And they've learned from lack of security and planning what can be the outcome. So I think that's an appreciation of the value of security.
All right, we're going to open up for any questions. I know that there are a few promoters here. events organizers and so who may need to ask some questions. Of course, we can't touch on all the topics today because of the time constraints, but we're definitely open for any questions that you may have for the panel.
What's your name, Janae? Good morning.
Good morning.
I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Is it Janae? Yes. I have a question with respect to the events that your entity does. Is it restricted just to the UK, or are you looking to do live events or promote events here in Jamaica?
That's a great question. Very good question, even. I had that quite a few times since I got here. So in terms of like the infrastructure of the company, anyone that doesn't know, so TikTok works on like a global scale. So there's a devoted UK and Ireland team, which is where I sit. There's a devoted European team. There's a devoted team in North America, which I believe also cover the Caribbean. Trust and believe I really want to be in the latter. At the moment, I'm in the UK, but one thing I'm actively trying to do, as much as I'm not born here, my family are from here, and I try to implement a lot of the cultural relevance that happens here in Jamaica within the UK. So there's a lot of artists that we work with, such as like Alakai Harley and multiple. We work with Ray Nephew all the time on a lot of like on a sponsorship/partnership basis, and ensuring that our partnerships are very thorough in terms of the programming. I would say watch this space. I would love to do something like this, but the way that the business works is that we work regionally. So I currently sit in the UK, but there's people that sit in my team and sit within like the American team that are currently trying to do things like this, like coming to Jamaica, having these conversations, getting really great feedback that we can bring back to the powers that be to ensure that we encourage change. I hope that answers your question, but to be completely candid, no.
Yes, it answered my question. I also wanted to understand, what do you mean when you said you're externally focused? What did that mean?
That's a good question as well. So I work at TikTok, I work for the company, and my role specifically is external facing. So as you all know, TikTok is an app, right? So you go on TikTok, you're looking at videos probably for hours at a time because it learns what you like. That's what the algorithm's about. Whereas my job specifically is externally facing in the sense of ensuring that I'm producing programs and events for the wider audience, whether they're managed creators, whether they're artists, whether they're people from the community, with the aim to bring them back on TikTok. So I do events for Black History Month, I do events for International Women's Day, Ramadan, Stephen Lawrence Day, and tentpole moments in the UK that impact the Black community, so to speak. So initially I was told to come in to just do events, but I made the role my own because I've noticed within the UK, as much as there's loads of representation, I noticed that there was a lack of Black amplification in-app and off-app. So off-app is in real-life events, basically, which is where I sit. And we ensure that we put programs together to gain trust within the Black community and bring in those that may not be on TikTok back on TikTok. So that's what I meant by externally facing.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. This is for promoters who deal with actual artists, the humans. So my question is, what is your most difficult behavioral response you have gotten when dealing with our artists, and what would you say to them today as an appeal?
Well, wow, there are many. One difficult point that we have when we doing stage shows is for artists to close or to get onto the stage late. Some artists telling you that they are 50 and they need to go on now, and you have it slated for them to go on after, and is like you're about to lose those artists if you don't put them on. So we have to make the changes. Ryan knows. have to make the changes right away and get them up. I would like to say to the artists that you have to be adjustable. You know what I mean? It's like certain times the show is running, but some artists didn't come on time, and therefore you have to set back, just like what happened to the panel up here. We have to set back a little. So just be adjustable and know that we are trying to do a show, and is many different parts have to come together. We have to plan a show for 1 year, and then we execute it on one night. And then that one night, you have to make sure that you execute it accurately. And if certain things can't go the way that you want it to go, you just take yourself out of it a little and think about the show.
That's a very good point. So, from my perspective, the artist element is a sideshow to my product. It's not a stage show that I do. It's more a party that has an artist or two on it. But what happens for me is that the big challenge is that you make certain accommodations there for the artists in terms of space and how many persons you expect them to come with, and you would have it in a contract that, boy, you know, it's 10 or 15, and you try to have that conversation early, but then the 15 turns into 100, and then what do you do? Because then a lot of times, and I must say a lot of times, but it has happened to me before where you almost get sticked up because, boy, I'm not comfortable unless the 100 comes with me, and I'm not going on the stage, and you have a lot of people waiting on the artist to perform, and you know, it's just challenging. So what I would encourage the artists and the representatives of the artists to do is to try and have the agreement up front what you're doing and try to stick to it, because we don't want to be in a position where we don't provide you what you expect, and we don't want to be having any conflict at the event. So just stick to what we spoke to, and I think it will be good.
Okay.
All right. Afternoon, everyone.
This question is pointed to SSB Terence Bent as it relates to the Noise Abatement Act. What's your assessment on this act as it relates to the promotion of Jamaican music within our communities?
The act is aimed at preventing noise nuisance to the public. I think the provisions of entertainment zones is going to relieve the current imbroglio. A lot of our event spaces are in residential areas, built-up areas, and that affects not only the noise pollution, but access. So going forward, as you know, the act is being reviewed for that extent to create those zones. The promoters, I do believe, are understandable of the provisions, and most promoters are complying. What I think needs to happen, there's been a change from when the act was envisaged in the early 2000s to what is required now. If we're going to say that Jamaica is going to be a hub for entertainment and cultural expression, we have to look about how we're going to facilitate a symbiotic relationship to have the zones and prevent some of the events taking place in built-up areas. So there is an acknowledgement of the provisions. The industry has made accommodation, and the security forces, the police and the high command and the various commanders are working to ensure that the act is enforced and kept, but at the same time allowing for events to be economically viable, safe, and regulated.
Thank you.
Okay, afternoon. Thank you for sharing the wealth of knowledge that you guys have been imparting on us. My name is Andre Blackwood. I'm CEO for Aoki Productions Limited. One of the things I've been considering is that for especially Sons and Rebel Salute, what have you found are patrons willing to pay for as it relates to streaming? And what have you given any thought to bottling your content and selling it even after the fact? That's for Mr. Rebel and Ellis. What we're going to do after the show. Yeah, man. So, for example, I went to Rebel Salute. I saw that you guys streamed live.
Yes.
But have you given any thought to packaging it after the fact, and what have you found in terms of patrons willing to pay for it?
Well, I have 29 years of products sitting on, and the idea is to really get it sold or package it and put it online for people to devour it, you know what I mean? So I am waiting. I am waiting to have the right deal to put it out. So yeah, we're willing. And how much people would pay, I don't know still. We have to do the feasibility studies in everything that we do. So we do a feasibility study, and if it shows us that $50 a pop or $25, whatever it is, we will make our adjustment and do it. Huh? Yeah, man. People, some of our audience are not 29 yet. So, you know what I mean, they are 20s and 18s and so forth. And they want to know how the Rebel Salute, the earlier ones, were. So we are willing to package it and let them understand how it started and how it grew throughout the years, you know what I mean? Yeah.
For me personally, speaking about Sans, it's not something that we've done before, but as of recent times, we've noticed that when we do an event, wherever we're doing it, it's still a global event. Because if, for example, if it's being held in Jamaica, you still have a lot of people watching the live stream. You know, people in the event going live and that type of thing. The numbers are very high, even on our pages and so on. So I know there is an interest to watch the event while it is happening, but we haven't looked into, monetizing that in any way or even providing the service. But it's something that we've thought about, and we may introduce it in the future, Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. I have a question. If you were to give us a list of the 5 top things that anyone needs to do when putting on an event, what are those 5 key things?
So, okay, let me see if I can touch that one. So, the first thing is the concept. So if you're thinking about doing an event, you have to remember there's a million events a day everywhere, right? So if you're coming in, you want to do something that's different, that, you try to be creative with your concept, because that gives you a head start. People will attend an event just because, that's interesting. I never think about that before, So even without knowing you or your brand, they will be interested enough to follow it up and maybe buy a ticket just on the concept alone. So you have to spend some time and you think about the concept.
So concept is one. Great.
Concept is one. 2, you have to remember that you're in the people business, so you have to be willing to invest in partnerships. It's not, especially when it comes to sponsorships, sometimes to get your foot in the game, you might want to make yourself a customer for the sponsor than just somebody asking for something. It makes the phone call easier. It makes your relationship more fruitful. As I mentioned earlier, example about me being willing to purchase products to establish a relationship. So the people part is important. The third thing is from a sponsorship side, you have to be willing to invest in your brand before you expect anybody else to invest. Because at the end of the day, if you don't believe in it enough to stick to it, why should I invest in it or invest in you? So you have to think about that part of it. Fourth thing is you have to be strong. Your heart have to be strong, your gut have to be strong, everything. Because at the end of the day, this is a high-risk situation, right? If you have sold, let's say for argument's sake, 10,000 tickets, don't celebrate yet, because that 10,000 tickets that you sold could potentially become a liability if you don't execute the event properly. So it's a high-stress situation, but you have to stick to it and get through it. And the fifth thing is be willing to lose. Don't go into any business and not be willing to lose, because a loss in this event business is not a loss, it's a lesson. If you've had any shortcomings and anywhere that led to you losing money, it's something that you can use the next time and put yourself in a position where you can succeed. So just those are some of my things I would just lay out.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. I saw SSP wanting to speak too.
Engage your partners early in the event. Create a list of partners that are relevant. Police, health, fire, municipal council, the community. If you're going into a community or regional area, speak to the community so that they can get a buy-in from them to support you going forward. Communicate. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Internally with your partners and externally with the patrons and the public. Put a risk-based approach in your planning process. Look at all of the things that can impact the success, even weather. You understand? So we just say, one of our show, but as a sponsors, you're a brand for making rain cloaks. Give us some branded rain cloaks so that we can have that out there. Use the opportunity to build that type of thing. Your customers will come from those who are not normally your customers. So for example, if you have a product that is going to impact the community, when they see good feedback from the social media, they like to become a customer, right? So if you're going to have an event and you're disruptive of traffic, disruptive of noise, this is not a good brand. I'm not going to support it. You'll be surprised. Leverage the pre-recorded events. I'm trying to get a particular, I won't name the show, but every time I see something on TikTok, I said, I was at that event, but could I have just a stream copy of it? Invest in the TikToks and whoever who can provide those recorded packages for prosperity. And that will build the brand Jamaica and the events that we have in Jamaica. Judy, that 5 or 6, I'm not sure.
Thank you. And we have one more question also.
No. I want to tell you.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Inevitable. Go ahead.
Yeah, man. The first thing, I agree with Mr. Bellamy that you have to have a concept. You have to have an idea that you sure can reach to the people. Secondly, you must start small. Start small that you can control whatever you do. The next thing, you have to have a team. You have a team. The teamwork make the dream work. So you have a team that you can give them a portfolio and they know what to do. You don't have to micromanage them. You know what I mean? The next thing, you have to know of all aspects of the show. Just like what Mr. Bent is talking about, the police, the fire, the parish council. You have to
get the permits.
You have to get all of these permits or you can't keep the show. So you have to learn those aspects of it. You have to make sure that your production is up. Your stage, your light, your sound, your backstage, your artist village, your media village is up to par. And you have to make sure that whatever you're putting on for your audience is something that will satisfy them, satisfy their musical need or their musical greed. It's like the end product of Edna Manley, of people playing an instrument, is a stage show or an event. So you have to make sure that the event is wholesome, is something that people will talk about, and so you don't do it just for one pop. You do it continuously, like how I'm doing something for 29 years.
So I just want to quickly add to that. That's cool. One thing I've noticed, like even with events, like you could start, as Sven said there, like starting off small. One thing that's really important, of course, with events is budget. You don't have to have the money, but when I say that, it's like budget's very, very important. If you don't have the money, you reach out to these brands. You want to be amplifying things for people. What's really important, like if you want to be doing an event in Brixton, London, which is like predominantly black and is doing great things in the community, how can you utilize people around you, NGOs, companies, charities? If you don't have the money to hire a graphic designer, look within your peers. Do you have a great friend that's great at doing graphics? Do you have a friend that's great at doing publicity? A friend that's great at producing? Utilize people around you so you can break bread together. I know so many people that do event collectives now and are really, really big and are going abroad because they started off with their friends and years later they just had an idea and it's now their livelihood. So definitely ensure you're utilizing the people around you as well.
Thank you very much. Can you put your hands together for our panel on the art of event production? Thank you so much. SSP Terrence Bent, Janae Marie from TikTok, Dean Shepard, Andrew Ellis, Kerwin Ballas, and of course, he was our host. Thank you.